Hi, everyone. All right, so we're gonna try and make this a little bit more interesting. We're gonna try to keep this like fast and moving. 2 seconds about Placer so you understand what it is that informs our perspective on the world. So Placer is a location data company. What does that mean? People vote with their feet. We show you how they vote across the United States every single day. We do that by analyzing a panel of tens of millions of mobile devices. Very critically, it's all aggregate data that has been stripped of identifiers like MAIDs, so we're kind of compliant with all necessary regulations. But now, on to the content itself. So if we switch sides, me and Andrew are gonna go through this together because we don't have a clicker, even one more. I wanna talk about some of the biggest trends that we're seeing, and again, this idea of the retail renaissance is really critical, because one of the things that's happened in retail is if we think about the evolution over the last 5 years and where things are heading, what was the primary narrative in retail in 2019? It was the retail apocalypse. Retail is dying, physical stores are dying, there's no more need for them, it's all going away, everything's gonna be online. And now we look back 6 years later and we say, well, that was absolute nonsense. Physical stores are a critical piece of the puzzle. They're in fact probably more important than they were. And so we have this really interesting situation where as marketers, advertisers, et cetera, brands, we're trying to understand what does all this mean? Where do we need to be? How is the consumer changing? And that consumer changing piece is really, really significant, because the consumer is fundamentally different than they were a few years ago. And the interesting thing is it's really easy to understand why and to be more consumer-centric. And this consumer centricity is super critical, because when we think about it, has there ever been a brand, agency, company that says they're not consumer-centric? The answer is no. But they're really not good at it, and the reason is it's really, really hard because we're complicated, right? So imagine the last time you walked into a store and someone greeted you early and were like, hey, how can I help you? And you say to yourself, wow, this person's really annoying, just leave me alone, I want to shop. And then the next time you go into that same store a month later, nobody comes up to you and you said, wow, the service here has really gone downhill, right? We're complicated, we're annoying, right? It's difficult, we're amazing, but we're complex. And I want to talk about how the consumer is changing and how we can understand it, predict it, and make decisions based off of it. So the first way that we're changing is in terms of where we are, where do we live, when do we work, the flexibility that's been enabled, the rise of hybrid work, what that means. Let's dive into hybrid work just for a second. Hybrid work doesn't mean people have stopped going to the office. It means they've stopped going to the office as much as they did before. And what's interesting is we see very similar patterns across the country of when they go to the office. So people go in Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays more than Mondays and Fridays. What does that mean for who is going to the office, and what does that mean for the consumer? So me as a consumer who used to go in 5 days a week, I would go to the grocery store on a Saturday because I didn't have any time. I would come home after an 8-hour day and an hour-long commute, and I would order in because I didn't have the patience to order. Right? I didn't have the patience to cook, excuse me. I had two modes. It was weekend and work week. But now I'm a totally different individual. I have more time, I have more flexibility. I can go to the grocery store at 8 a.m. on a Friday because I'm not going into work. I can go to SoulCycle at 10 a.m. on a Monday. And by the way, the idea that I can go to the grocery store at 8 a.m. on a Friday is massive, because it's not just the fact that I can do it in a day when it's more convenient for me. I have more time, I have less pressure. And I've just gained an hour back that I would have spent on the weekend. So I'm actually a happier person because I'm spending more time on the things I want to spend time when I have that free time. And so this fundamental shift in who we are is unbelievably significant, and it changes who the customer is. And by the way, this isn't something that's short term. So we talk about trends all the time, and I think about trends the way I think about, I don't know, the clothes that my 12-year-old daughter is into. Like, it's not going to be what she's excited about 2 years from now. I think about these as status quo shifts. The customer is different, and they're not going to go back to the way they were in the near term. The other thing that's changed about the customer is they are less convenience-oriented. So one of my favorite things is everyone talks about convenience is king and how important convenience is. And I don't want to say that convenience is unimportant, but the idea that convenience is king is absolute nonsense. And it screams out in the data, right? So one of the things that's been really interesting is if convenience were king, we'd see people go to fewer locations. So I don't know, I want to do all of my grocery visits for the month. I would go to all-in-ones. I would make fewer visits. I would go to places that are closer to my home and not farther away from my home. But that's not what we're seeing. We're seeing people increase the number of locations they'll visit within a specific sector. We're seeing people travel farther away in order to go to specific chains and consume specific brands. And what this tells us is a few things. One, convenience is not king. Two, what is more important than convenience? Product, brand, experience. All of these elements have shown us that there is something bigger that the consumer is looking for, as opposed to the classic idea of let me get in and get out as quickly as possible. And this orientation to experience is a fundamental shift in the way we look at retail. It's a fundamental shift in the way we look at brands, the power that a brand has even within a retail environment. The other thing that we're seeing that's been really fascinating is this emphasis on experience, not just within the retail locations, but within the shopping centers, within the malls that they reside within. So one of our favorite kind of corollaries to the retail apocalypse narrative was this idea that the country is over-malled, and malls are in some perpetual state of demise, and they're going to disappear. Again, absolutely not true. In fact, not only is it not true, we've actually seen malls perform incredibly well, especially top-tier malls. And what's even more fascinating is the dynamic that's driven that growth. So when we think about why malls have succeeded, one of our most interesting data points from the holiday season of last year was that mall traffic increases outpace the same visitation increases for classic anchor tenants, which means that the anchor tenant for the mall wasn't the anchor tenant, it was the mall itself. People going for a holistic experience where it wasn't just about this classic idea of kind of the 1980s mall of someone walking through and giggling with 800 bags in the crooks of their arm. It was something different, it was something more robust, it was something more holistic. I want dining, I want fitness, I want experiences, I want less retail and more other types of tenants within that environment, and that's what's going to drive success. And this asks us this really fundamental question of what is driving success in the retail environment? What is it that people are really looking for? And in so many cases, we see that this idea of being everything for everyone is dying. It's not succeeding. It works in certain cases, certainly. But it's really difficult to have sustained success if you don't have a clear reason for being. And one of the areas we see this most glaringly is in specialty grocery. Specialty grocery is driving more visits from farther away, wider audiences, because people are willing to test something and try it out for someone who has authenticity and expertise within a specific segment of grocery. Again, fundamentally opposed to the idea of convenience, but oriented to the idea that I want something special. I'm willing to take steps to make that, to arrive at that special place, or to get that special product. And the amazing thing here is it puts more power in the hands of the retailers, in the hands of the brands. I think when we think of all of this together, it kind of centers around this idea that is getting a ton of hype, which is the whole idea of retail media in the physical locations. Now, this is this trend that I've been incredibly bullish on, but also incredibly disappointed by, right? So if we think about why is retail media such an exciting concept in the physical environment? The consumer's in discovery mode. When we walk through the grocery store, we're willing to be influenced by what we see. Oh, I didn't think I was gonna get pasta, but now I'm in the mood for pasta, right? Oh, they have fresh salmon, maybe I'll do that for dinner. That's not a mindset we have when we're shopping online. That is a distinctly in-store experience. So I'm in discovery mode. I'm close to the point of sale. I'm influenceable in a very powerful way. To ever take your kids through the cereal aisle of a store, and you see the excitement that's generated when there's like that new form of Cap'n Crunch that has some other colored, I don't know, flavor alongside of it. And you think about the idea that I can influence someone close to the point of sale when they're in discovery mode, and you recognize how powerful this opportunity is. So what's holding it back? Accessibility. The idea that all of these distinct networks I need to now somehow gain access to without a single kind of distributor is just too much for the average brand. But this tells us so much about where retail is going, where advertising and marketing is going, which is how do I engage with people when they're in public spaces? In spaces where they spend time. This could be in the mall, this could be in stores. By the way, this could be in stadiums. If you ever look at data for the average NFL stadium, and you think about where revenue is coming for the average NFL team, it is disproportionately oriented towards TV rights. In fact, in some cases, it can be as low as 10, 12% is coming from teams grabbing sponsorships. And the reason it's so low is because the sponsorships that they're grabbing are silly and simplistic. Not everyone who watches football only wants trucks, beer, and, I don't know, financial products. There are so many opportunities to engage people in environments where they are open to being engaged, in areas where they have an emotional connection. And so the whole change that we're seeing within the retail environment, within this renaissance of physical spaces, where we want places we want to go, we want to spend time, and we're so excited to be there, we're open to being influenced. Consumers are screaming to be engaged in these areas. And there is a massive opportunity for those who can unlock it And hopefully we're all going to benefit from that success. Thank you very much.
Ethan, do we want to answer any questions while you're up on?
Yeah. I was just stepping off to be fun.
We have like 3 or 4 minutes left, so I was just thinking if anyone has any questions.
Now someone has to ask a question because I just got back on stage. So, I mean, let's take the retail example. I think the cool thing about the data is that at its best, it's widely applied, right? So a real estate team will use it to figure out where their next location should be. The advertising and media team will figure out how to cluster stores together so that if a brand wants to reach only high-income audiences, they can cluster their stores in just that way and reach those audiences. Insights team will use it for competitive benchmarking. How are people really moving? In the retail media space, we have lots of retailers who are using it as their impression metrics, their baseline metric. Their marketing and efforts and their advertising efforts are leveraging the data. How do the audience perform at their best stores versus their worst stores? What are the differences in terms of psychographics or demographics? So all of these layers are very interesting and valuable to lots of different players. The thing that excites us most about the data is the fact that data at its best is a language, right? It's a way that people can communicate. And so when you have a data set that can be used by so many different teams, you enable a level of collaboration and optimization that would otherwise be so difficult to achieve. Thank you all so much.